Today we're going to talk about the Roman conquest of Greece, and this was all happening simultaneously with the events of the Second and Third Punic War that we discussed in the last video, so feel free to watch it at the same time to get to know your place. So anyhow, Roman conquest of Greece. So we have the political situation. Why did Rome invade Macedon in the first place? So during the Second Punic War, when Hannibal was waging war against the Romans, Philip V of Macedon signed an alliance with the Carthaginians, a mutual alliance against the Romans, and Philip V also moved against the Roman territory in Greece. It's not a lot of territory, but Philip V basically moved in and conquered it. So then the Romans sent a force to push Philip back, and it was pretty much a stalemate, like the so-called First Macedonian War. It wasn't really a war. There wasn't really any casualties or anything. Philip V just renounced his treaty with Carthage. But after Carthage and Hannibal was defeated, Philip V was now on Rome's radar because Philip V had been aggressively expanding his Macedonian domains and attacking a bunch of Greek cities that were friendly with Rome, such as the Aetolian League, Pergamon, and some of the islands in the Aegean. So then Rome sent a diplomat to try to dissuade Philip V from his expansionism, but it failed, and then Rome declared war on Philip V of Macedon. And this is known as the Second Macedonian War, and they appointed a guy named Titus Quinticus Flaminius. He had been consul before the age of 30, which is one of the rare things that you see during the Republic at this time. He's also descendant of the famous Roman dictator Cincinnatus. So yeah, Flaminius sent with a force of around like 16,000, and Philip V meets Flaminius with an equally sized force of 16,000 at Cynocephaly, and during the battle, Flaminius ordered his Roman forces to attack the Macedonian left wing, which was weak because it was on very uneven terrain, and the Greeks, they don't fight with uneven terrain because they have a phalanx, and uneven terrain is bad for that. So then the legions are able to pretty much destroy the Macedonian left, and they turn around and outflank the Macedonians who are fighting the Romans in like the main section of the battle. So then the Macedonian army was pretty much crushed at Cynocephaly by Flaminius, and Flaminius was victorious. And this battle basically proved the superiority of Rome's legions against the outdated phalanx, and Philip V had to become a vassal of Rome, and this caused a power vacuum in Greece because Philip V was no longer the strong man. But not all Greeks were happy with Rome's intervention. In fact, the Spartans immediately revolted alongside some of their Laconian allies under King Nabis of Sparta, but Flaminius just marched in and defeated the Spartans and pretty much ended Spartan hopes of trying to become relevant again, because Sparta was already a shadow of its former self, and now they're even more of a shadow of their former self after losing to Flaminius in the Laconian War. But all this in Greece led a guy named King Antiochus III to take notice. So Antiochus III, or Antiochus the Great as he's known, he was the king of the Seleucid Empire, which is one of the empires that rose after Alexander the Great died. And he's known as the Great because he had recently conquered territory for the Seleucids, such as in Bactria and Parthia. He recently conquered those lands, and he conquered the Levant from the Ptolemies of Egypt. So Antiochus was already a very successful military leader, and he also ended the Seleucid civil war at the time. So Antiochus, his empire was pretty much the strongest empire in the East, and now that Rome is meddling in Greek affairs, he's beginning to take notice. And he sees an opportunity for conquest now that his rival, King Philip, is weakened. So he sees that he can now invade Macedon and maybe take power there. And he's also approached by Hannibal, who had been exiled from Carthage, and Hannibal encourages Antiochus to invade Greece to liberate it from Rome. So Antiochus obliges and decides to invade Greece. And the Seleucid Roman war is nothing but a disaster for the Seleucids. They just lose left and right. So first Antiochus decides to meet with the Romans at the pass of Thermopylae, which is the same place where, the famous movie 300, 300 Spartans fighting the Persians, yeah, all of that. And Antiochus had around 12,000 men. The Romans had similar number, like 8,000. But then the Romans they basically find the pass through Thermopylae, and then they just surround Antiochus's 12,000 and almost completely annihilate his 12,000 men. And at the same time, Hannibal, who's in command of the Seleucid navy, is losing the battles at sea, and he's removed from his position, and Hannibal just leaves the court of the Seleucids after that. And Antiochus decides to withdraw to his mainland in Asia and raises a force of like 72,000 Seleucids, and the Romans appoint Scipio Africanus' brother, Lucius Cornelius Scipio, with around 30,000 men to face off against an army that's twice their size. And keep in mind that the Romans are fighting professional armies. These aren't just like, barbarian tribes living in, tents and mud huts and that kind of stuff. Like these are professional armies of huge, wealthy empires like Carthage, Macedon. These are armies that once conquered the world. So the Romans are also allied with Eumenes II of Pergamon, and Antiochus at the Battle of Magnesia faces off against Scipio and his allies, and Antiochus begins the battle with a cavalry charge into the allied cavalry, who withdraw, and Antiochus's hasty cavalry charge causes him to continue chasing, but then he completely leaves his main army unaware that they're being surrounded by the Romans and their allies at the same time. So in the end, at the Battle of Magnesia, the Romans only lose around 5,000 men, or several hundred, as their historians say. Antiochus, he loses more than 50,000. And the Seleucids, they never recover from losing at Magnesia, and they lose all of their territories in Anatolia to Rome and its ally Pergamon. And Antiochus would eventually die trying to suppress a rebellion raiding a temple, and the Seleucid Empire would just begin to crumble after that, and it would eventually reduce in size and just be swallowed by other empires. And Scipio would be named Asiaticus for his victory, just like how his brother was named Africanus for defeating Hannibal. Scipio is named Asiaticus for defeating the Seleucids. But Scipio Asiaticus would have a political downfall after the war because he's accused by some of his political rivals of misappropriating some of the funds that were given to him during the Seleucid War, which is basically a form of treason. And Scipio, he's able to get out of it, but get out of the punishment, but he dies in obscurity because it hurt his reputation so much. But Scipio Asiaticus, to be honest, he's very underrated when you compare him to his brother who defeated Hannibal. Like, even though of course, his brother was obviously the better general for defeating Hannibal, but you can't really, you know, say much about Scipio Asiaticus' victory, because the Battle of Magnesia opened up the door to the east for the Romans in future Roman conquest. But then we have the Third Macedonian War, or the last one, at least. The son of King Philip V, King Perseus, he decided to rise up in rebellion against the Romans, and he actually defeated a small Roman force at the Battle of Callinicum. But then the Romans, they appoint Lucius Aemilius Paulus, who had experience fighting the Lusitanians in Spain, and they meet at the Battle of Pydna. Perseus has around 43,000, Paulus has around 39,000, and the battle is very similar to Cynocephaly, and Paulus's legions attacked the phalanx of the Macedonians under Perseus on uneven ground, and the phalanx is in a disadvantage, and it's causing gaps within the Macedonian infantry, and the Romans are able to take advantage of that and go through the gaps, outflank the Macedonian phalanx, and during the battle, when Perseus sees this, he begins to try to flee the battle, but he ends up getting captured instead. All the while, the Romans, they end up killing more than 30,000 Macedonians at Pydna, and the Romans, they only lose a couple hundred men, so This was probably one of Rome's great victories in the Republican conquests, and Lucius Aemilius Paulus is acclaimed Macedonicus or Macedonius for his pretty much annihilating victory over the Macedonians. And after this, Rome would just annex Macedon so that Macedon wouldn't rebel again, and they would end the Antigonid dynasty of Macedon for good. Now, Roman affairs in the east against Greeks aren't over because it's going to still continue because the Romans are going to also have to, yeah, there's still a lot of Roman fighting against Greek, but this is the main stuff, so this will be the end of this episode for now. But wait, there's more. It's not over yet. The Fourth Macedonian War breaks out sometime after this, and there's this guy named Andriscus who claims to be related to the Macedonian royal family, the Antigonids. He's just a pretender, but then he rises up successfully against the Romans and temporarily captures a province of Thessaly. But then Roman forces sent by a guy named Quintus Caecilius, also named Macedonicus for his victory, defeat Andriscus at the Second Battle of Pydna. After this, the Greek city-states of the Achaean League decide to rebel against Rome, and then the Romans send another army under a guy named Lucius Mummius or Lucius Mummius Achaeus to defeat the Greeks, and Achaeus has the city of Corinth sacked, and eventually the Romans just decide to annex the entirety of Greece just to prevent all of this rebellion from happening. So that's it. That's the end of the real end of the episode here.